Hello guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. True God in Another World, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 23. Sylvie. Rimuru. Pav. Crack. I gazed at Sylvia's egg, nestled in my hands. Its smooth surface pulsed with a faint, warm glow, signaling it was on the verge of hatching. Had Art's actions truly awakened Sylvia's will within, or was it simply a matter of timing? I could have made it hatch at any moment, but something held me back, a sense that this moment was meant to unfold in its own time. As I observed the egg, lost in my thoughts, a sudden swirl of inky black smoke materialized beside me, jolting me from my reverie. For a moment, I thought it might be Seal, manifesting in her mysterious way. But as the smoke dissipated, my eyes widened in shock at the figure that stood before me. A girl, seemingly my age, with flowing white hair that cascaded down her back and vibrant purple eyes that sparkled with an otherworldly light. She bore a striking resemblance to a younger Sylvia, her presence both familiar and utterly surprising. Sylvia? I stuttered, my mind reeling from the unexpected transformation. Sylvia paid no mind to my bewildered expression as she gently took the egg from my hands. Her eyes gleamed with maternal anticipation as she cradled it close, the crackling fissures on the egg's surface growing more pronounced. Sylvia paid no mind to my bewildered expression as she gently took the egg from my hands. Her eyes gleamed with maternal anticipation as she cradled it close, the crackling fissures on the egg's surface growing more pronounced. With a final, decisive crack, a small black dragon hatchling emerged from the egg. It resembled more of a cat than a traditional dragon, its sleek body adorned with shimmering scales. Its eyes, large and curious, blinked at the new world around it. Crack crack. So cute. Sylvia's face lit up with pure joy as she held her daughter, the hatchling nuzzling against her cheek affectionately. The room was suddenly filled with the sound of contented purring, emanating from the tiny dragon. Q. The hatchling replied happily, its tail swishing back and forth in delight. Sylvia gently placed her daughter on the bed, where the little one sat on all fours, tilting its head inquisitively as it studied our faces. I couldn't help but smile at the adorable scene. Before I could react, Sylvia wrapped her arms around me in a tight embrace. I felt her tears dampening my shoulder as she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "Thank you, Rimuru, really thank you." I didn't speak, simply returning her hug and patting her head gently. She was slightly shorter than me, her face pressed against my shoulder as she cried tears of joy and gratitude. Suddenly, Sylvia's grip tightened, squeezing the air from my lungs. "Sylvia? I'm in pain here," I gasped, trying to loosen her hold. She didn't respond, her arms like a vice around me. "Sylvia, it hurts, please let go," I pleaded, struggling to free myself from her iron grip. Finally releasing me, Sylvia's expression transformed. The joy vanished, replaced by a serious, almost angry look. A dark aura seemed to emanate from her as she said with a small smile, "Rimuru, we need to talk." Her tone sent a shiver down my spine. "What is it, Sylvia-san?" I replied nervously, unconsciously slipping into Japanese and using honorifics. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you could create a body for me?" Sylvia demanded, crossing her arms over her chest. Her purple eyes flashed with a mix of hurt and frustration. My mind went blank. How did she know that? I thought, frantically trying to piece together what was happening. Less than. Greater than CL's silence spoke volumes. I knew instantly that she must have told Sylvia, but why? "Rimuru. Can you tell me the truth this time without hiding such things? Please?" Sylvia's voice was tinged with desperation, her eyes pleading for honesty. Less than she was hurt when she learned that you had hidden something so important from her. Greater than. Greater than this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't told her something. Less than she would have known anyway, Master. Greater than I couldn't deny the truth in CL's words. Deep down, I had always known this moment would come eventually. Accepting my fault, I let out a heavy sigh. My shoulders sagged as I met Sylvia's intense gaze. "What do you want to know?" I asked, bracing myself for the difficult conversation ahead. The tension in the room was palpable as I began to answer Sylvia's questions. My heart raced, and I could feel a slight tremble in my hands as I spoke. I kept my eyes fixed on the ground, afraid of what I might see in her expression if I looked up. Sylvia's voice cut through the silence like a knife, her words laced with a mix of astonishment and skepticism. "So, you're trying to tell me that you're not just another self-proclaimed deity, but rather, the chosen successor of the Creator?" Her tone was cautious, as if testing the veracity of my claim. I nodded slowly, still unable to meet her gaze. The weight of my confession hung heavy in the air between us. Suddenly, I felt a warm, gentle touch on my hand. Sylvia's daughter, sensing my distress, had curled up next to me and was now rubbing her head against my palm, her tiny tongue darting out to lick my fingers comfortingly. Sylvia's brow furrowed as she processed the information. "Wait a minute, I need to organize my thoughts," she said, her voice trailing off. As the silence stretched on, I absent-mindedly stroked baby Sylvia's scales, finding some solace in the rhythmic motion. My mind raced with possibilities of how Sylvia might react, each scenario more anxiety-inducing than the last. Finally, Sylvia spoke, her voice tinged with realization. "Your unwavering confidence and power makes sense now. The ability to reshape reality with a mere thought. It's no wonder you carry yourself with such assurance." I braced myself for her next words, my pulse quickening with anticipation. "It's shocking news, but I'm so glad that you told me your secret, Sylvia said, her tone surprisingly gentle. Startled, I lifted my head, my eyes wide with disbelief as I met her kind smile. "What? Why are you so surprised?" she asked, noticing my reaction. I began, but Sylvia cut me off, her voice warm and understanding. "That I was going to worship you as a deity or something? Or that I'd hate you for hiding this from me?" She shook her head, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "Rimuru, you worry too much about what others might think," she said, giggling. "I'm not going to worship you like a god or treat you like you're something different. I admire you as a person and as a friend. So, I won't be angry with you either. After all, everyone has their secrets, and besides, you're my first friend." Her words washed over me like a soothing balm, easing the knot of anxiety in my chest. I felt a tear escape, trailing down my cheek. Sylvia reached out, her thumb gently wiping away the tear before pulling me into a warm embrace. "Thank you, Sylvia," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion as I returned the hug, relishing in the comfort of her acceptance. As we pulled apart, a mischievous glint appeared in Sylvia's eyes. She stood up from the bed, stretching playfully. "But still, not telling me such a secret hurt me and made me feel sad, so now you must comfort me," she teased, her tone light and playful. I couldn't help but chuckle weakly, relief flooding through me at her easy forgiveness. "Haha, so what do you want?" I asked, a smile tugging at my lips as I watched her, grateful for her understanding and the way she could lift my spirits so effortlessly. "First," Sylvia said, her voice brimming with excitement, "you should create a body for me. It'd be a total snooze fest if I just sat on the sidelines watching you have all the fun." I nodded, mulling over her request. It made sense. Who'd want to be a spectator in their own story? But before I could respond, Sylvia dropped another bombshell. "Oh, and one more thing," she added, her eyes sparkling mischievously. "I want it to be a human body, not some fancy Asura or dragon. And make me about your age, will you?" My eyebrows shot up so fast they nearly flew off my face. "Hold up," I sputtered. "You want to be human? Why on earth would you pick that?" Sylvia's lips curled into a small, mysterious smile. "I want to experience being human," she explained, her voice filled with a childlike wonder that I'd never heard from her before. "It'd be pretty boring if I were as strong as I used to be. Where's the fun in that? Don't you think starting from scratch would be way more interesting?" I scratched my head, considering her words. "I get where you're coming from, but," I trailed off, worry creeping into my voice. "You do realize you'll be as weak as a newborn kitten in a human body, right? And with the war breathing down our necks, you won't have much time to level up. Are you absolutely sure about this?" The looming conflict weighed heavily on my mind, and the thought of Sylvia being vulnerable didn't sit well with me. I cared about her, and the idea of her being in danger made my heart clench. Sylvia's expression softened. She reached out and gave my arm a reassuring pat. "Ah, look at you, all worried about little old me," she cooed. "But don't you fret. I've got it all figured out. Here's the deal. I want you to make it into a solid orange core, as strong as your body. That shouldn't be too tricky for you, right, hotshot? I couldn't help but chuckle at her clever workaround. Well, I said, shaking my head in amused disbelief. You do realize you're gonna be built like a tank right from the get-go, right? What happened to starting from scratch, huh? Sylvia shrugged, a mischievous glint in her eye. Oh, please, she scoffed playfully. Don't act all high and mighty. If I remember correctly, you popped into existence with a great sage and a predator in your back pocket. Not to mention all those fancy skills you got handed on a silver platter. I'm just evening the playing field a tiny bit. Her playful jab hit home, and I couldn't help but grin. All right, I conceded, throwing my hands up in mock surrender. You got me there. No problem, I'll whip up that body for you. But just so you know, you'll be starting out in Xyrus, and Seal will be there to help you settle in. You ready for this wild ride? Sylvia's face lit up with pure excitement. Ready? I was born ready. Well, about to be born ready, technically, she quipped. And hey, since you spilled your guts to me earlier, I've got a little something for you. I quirked an eyebrow, intrigued. A reward? Hang on, didn't you just ask me to do you a favor? And now I'm getting a prize? I'm not following your logic here, Sylvia. She laughed, a warm, affectionate sound. Oh, you adorable dummy, she said fondly. You took a huge risk telling me your secret. You put our friendship on the line for the sake of honesty. That kind of trust? That deserves a reward in my book. I shook my head, a bemused smile playing on my lips. Your reasoning is as mysterious as ever, I chuckled. Sylvia's face brightened. Oh, you're right. How about you give her a name? She suggested, her eyes twinkling with anticipation. My jaw dropped. Are you sure? She's your daughter, I protested, feeling overwhelmed by the honor and responsibility. Yeah, that's not too hard for you, right? Sylvia teased, her confidence in me both flattering and terrifying. After a moment of contemplation, I offered hesitantly, well, how about Sylvie then? The name felt right, a tribute to Sylvia while giving the child her own identity. Sylvia's face lit up, her eyes shining with approval and something deeper. Was that pride? Oh, this is good, she exclaimed, her joy infectious. I looked down at the tiny being in my arms, a surge of affection warming my chest. What do you think, little girl? Your name will be Sylvie. Q. Sylvie responded with a joyous sound. Suddenly, her tiny tongue darted out, licking the underside of my left forearm. I yelped in surprise, the sensation scorching yet not painful. Before I could react further, a glowing black light began enveloping my arm. Sylvia chuckled, her laughter tinged with knowing and a hint of something I couldn't quite place. Papa. A small voice echoed in my mind, clear as a bell. I gaped at Sylvie, shock and wonder battling for dominance in my expression. Sylvia's face mirrored my surprise, suggesting she too had heard the mental proclamation. Papa. Sylvie repeated, bouncing excitedly on my lap. The reality of the situation began to sink in, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions. My cheeks burned as I processed the implications. If Sylvia's daughter was calling me Papa, then that meant. I glanced at Sylvia, noticing a matching blush on her face. The air between us crackled with unspoken understanding and a hint of embarrassment. Sylvia broke the charged silence, her voice a mix of resignation and amusement. I suppose we have no other choice, she murmured, a small smile playing on her lips. I'm counting on you to take care of my daughter well, Papa, she added teasingly before vanishing from sight, leaving me alone with my newfound responsibility. Exhaustion suddenly hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed onto my bed, still cradling Sylvie carefully in my arms. Our eyes met, and I felt a connection forming, delicate yet unbreakable. Papa, huh? I mused aloud, my voice barely above a whisper. A gentle smile tugged at my lips as I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. I think it's not such a bad thing, after all. As consciousness slowly crept in, I blinked away the fog of sleep, my eyes struggling to adjust to the room's inky darkness. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive, as if the night was reluctant to release its hold. Despite the early hour, I knew sleep had abandoned me for good. With a quiet groan, I carefully extricated myself from the warmth of the blankets, hyper-aware of every rustle and creak. My gaze fell on Sylvie, curled up on the pillow beside me, her tiny form rising and falling with each breath. A surge of affection washed over me as I tiptoed towards the window, my bare feet chilled by the cold floor. I grasped the thick, velvety curtains and drew them back. Instantly, golden sunlight flooded the room, chasing away the shadows and bathing everything in a warm, honey-like glow. The sudden brightness made me squint, but as my eyes adjusted, I felt the sun's warmth caress my skin. It was like a gentle embrace, familiar and comforting, chasing away the last vestiges of sleep and filling me with a sense of renewal. Turning back to the bed, I couldn't help but smile at the sight of Sylvie. The sunlight danced across her iridescent scales, creating a mesmerizing display of colors. Her peaceful expression tugged at my heart, filling me with an overwhelming sense of protectiveness. Yesterday's events flashed through my mind. Arthur's assimilation, the news of our impending return home, my confession to Sylvia, and most importantly, Sylvie becoming my daughter. A mix of emotions swirled within me, excitement, anxiety, and a touch of uncertainty about how this might affect my relationship with Sylvia. My reverie was interrupted by a soft, "Hugh." Sylvie's eyes fluttered open, bright and inquisitive. In a graceful leap, she bounded from the bed to my shoulder, nuzzling against my neck. Her warm breath tickled my skin, and I could feel the vibration of her contented purr. "Good morning, Sylvie," I said softly, my voice still husky from sleep. As I scratched behind her ears, I marveled at the silky texture of her scales. "Okay, Sylvie. We need to wash now." Her head tilted, eyes wide with curiosity. "Hugh?" The questioning tone in her voice made me chuckle, realizing she probably didn't understand the concept of washing. In the bathroom, I turned on the shower, steam quickly filling the air. The sound of water hitting tile created a soothing white noise. As we stepped under the warm spray, I felt Sylvie tense momentarily before relaxing in my arms. Droplets clung to her scales, creating a shimmering effect in the bathroom's soft light. Lathering up some soap, I began to wash Sylvie, feeling the unique texture of her body, smooth scales interspersed with patches of downy fur. She closed her eyes in bliss, her purr intensifying as I gently massaged her. The scent of the soap, a mix of lavender and something distinctly magical, filled my nostrils. After drying off, we returned to the bedroom. I reached for my dimension ring, the cool metal a stark contrast to my warm skin. From it, I retrieved a bag of monster cores for Sylvie. The cores glowed faintly, pulsing with residual energy. Sylvie's eyes widened with delight as she began to devour them, each crunch sending a small shiver of magical energy through the air. As we left the room, the castle corridors felt different somehow, like the very air was charged with anticipation. The shocked expressions of the maids we passed added to the surreal feeling of the morning. Their wide eyes and slack jaws might have been comical if not for the nervousness bubbling in my stomach. Descending the grand staircase, I spotted a familiar figure. "Oh, Gramps, good morning," I called out, trying to inject cheerfulness into my voice to mask my anxiety. "Ah, you are here." Virian turned, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile that quickly faltered as his eyes landed on Sylvie. His usual composure cracked, replaced by utter bewilderment. He raised a trembling hand, pointing at my new companion. That's," he stammered, words failing him. "What is that?" he finally managed to ask, his eyes never leaving the top of my head. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of Sylvie on my shoulder. Yeah, it's a dragon," I replied, trying to sound casual as I scratched the back of my head. Through our mental link, I sensed Sylvie's unease. "Q?" she chirped softly, her tiny claws gripping my shirt a little tighter. "Dragon?" Virian exclaimed, his eyes widening. He quickly composed himself, taking a deep breath before continuing. "If that really is a dragon, how on earth did you come across an egg? And more importantly, how did you manage to hatch it?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "It was the egg of the same being who gave Art her will," I explained. "When he opened her mother's will, it hatched." Virian stroked his chin thoughtfully, his brow furrowed. "That's a plausible explanation, I suppose. The draconic races haven't been seen for centuries, Our records of them are limited at best." He shook his head, as if to clear his thoughts. "No use dwelling on it now, though. Just be sure to keep the hatchling close at all times." As we approached the ornate doors of the dining hall, Virian lowered his voice. "While it does resemble a creature of the draconic races, I'm likely one of the few who could make that connection. Most people wouldn't recognize it as a dragon, so it should be fine if you pass it off as a rare mana beast. He glanced at Sylvia again, a hint of fascination in his eyes. So, she is your bond then? I nodded, feeling a surge of affection for the little creature. Yes, her name is Sylvie. We entered the dining hall, a spacious room with a long table set for a royal feast. Tapestries depicting elven history adorned the walls, and a crystal chandelier sparkled overhead. The king and queen were already seated, their regal presence commanding the room. Tess had just arrived, her silver hair catching the light as she turned to greet us. Arthur, I noticed, was still absent, probably still asleep in his room. As soon as we entered, all eyes turned to Sylvie. Questions began to fly, and I found myself repeating the story, careful to omit any mention of her true nature. She's the egg of the being who gave Arthur at will, I explained, hoping my vague answer would satisfy their curiosity without revealing too much. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the backyard as Tess, Gramps, and I stepped out after a hearty breakfast. The grass was still damp with dew, and a light breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. As we approached the training area, I spotted Aaliyah and Aya already waiting for us. Their faces lit up when they saw us coming. They greeted Gramps with a respectful bow, their movements graceful and practiced. Then, they turned to Tess and me, their smiles warm and genuine. "Good morning, Tess," Aya and Aaliyah said in unison, their voices cheerful. However, their expressions quickly changed to confusion as their eyes landed on the small creature perched on my shoulder. Aaliyah's brow furrowed as she asked, what exactly is that?" I gently stroked Sylvie's shimmering scales, feeling her soft purr vibrate against my fingers. "This is Sylvie, my bond. She hatched just yesterday." Aaliyah's eyes widened, her mouth slightly agape. "Wait, don't tell me she's a dragon?" she asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and awe. I nodded, unable to hide my grin. "Yes, she is." Aaliyah and Aya exchanged shocked glances, their eyes wide with wonder. "That's unbelievable," Aya exclaimed, her voice filled with amazement. "It's commonly known that dragons are already extinct. How is this possible?" Before I could answer, we heard a sleepy yawn behind us. Arthur was making his way towards us, rubbing his eyes. His hair was still messy from sleep, but his eyes lit up when he spotted Sylvie. He quickened his pace, reaching out to pet her gently. "Is this Sylvia's daughter?" he asked, his voice filled with excitement and wonder. "Yeah, she hatched yesterday. I named her Sylvie," I replied, watching as Sylvie nuzzled into Arthur's hand. Aya's head whipped around, her short hair swishing with the movement. "Wait, who is Sylvia?" she asked, her gaze darting between Arthur and me. "Is she a dragon too?" Arthur nodded, his hand still stroking Sylvie's scales. "Yes, she's the one who gave me her will." Aya's jaw dropped. "You have a dragon's will?" she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. She looked around at the rest of us, noting our lack of surprise. "Wait, do you already know that?" Gramps nodded sagely. "We knew this yesterday," he confirmed. Aya's shoulders slumped slightly. "So I'm the last to know?" she murmured, a hint of disappointment in her voice. We all nodded, and Arthur couldn't help but grin. "So she becomes your bond now?" he asked, gesturing to Sylvie. "Yeah, we're under an equals contract," I explained, feeling a warm sense of pride. Gramps' eyebrows shot up. "Equals contract and born yesterday? As expected of a dragon," he murmured, clearly impressed. Tess tugged on her grandpa's sleeve, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is this something amazing, Grandpa?" she asked eagerly. Gramps nodded enthusiastically. "Of course it is," he exclaimed. "Only beasts that are level A class and above can establish an equals contract, which means Sylvie's level is at least a class. Although she was considered to be a rank A beast currently, she couldn't defeat one, she still didn't know how to use her strength, and most of her strength had been sealed by Sylvia, making her currently only a rank A beast. Anyway, let's start the training." After that matter was settled, I placed Sylvie on the ground beside me while I approached Arthur. "Anyway, let's start the training," I said, gently placing Sylvie on the soft grass beside me. I approached Arthur, lowering my voice to a whisper. "Sylvia says she's waiting for you in Xyrus." Arthur's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and joy spreading across his face. "Really? Are we finally going to see her again? He whispered back excitedly, barely able to contain his grin. I nodded, and Arthur's eyes sparkled with anticipation. I can't wait to see her again, he said, his voice filled with genuine happiness and excitement. As the excitement settled, Gramps clapped his hands together, drawing everyone's attention. All right, let's begin our training, he announced, his voice carrying across the yard.